Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, the 2016 election cycle continues to expose the fact that conservatives have no place in it. Donald Trump likes to go forth and claim that he is some sort of major conservative, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. He has shown time and again that he has no interest in being conservative, or being a conservative. He's never really shown or adhered to any conservative principles for the vast majority of the 70 years he's spent on God's green earth. I know that we've repeated this on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer, but it's just so true. Over the past year, what we've been observing, particularly with respect to his conduct, is that everything that he said thus far just should not be surprising, that he's not a conservative. And it really should be of no surprise that the election is unfurling in the way that it has thus far. There's nothing surprising in the fact that Donald's children aren't conservative either. What's surprising is that there are so many conservatives who have simply given up on their values and principles for the fleeting hope of victory. To be honest, I don't see much chance of victory here. Sure, they're trying to play up Hillary's supposed health issues, but what is that really going to accomplish? Nothing, really. It doesn't change the fact that Trump is a deplorable candidate, or that he isn't a conservative. That's the thing we have to face now. We have to realize that in this election cycle, conservatives are just out. They've pushed us out, and the supposed right-wing or conservative punditry and commensurate have turned their backs on the message they've preached for decades now. I wish it wasn't so, but all one has to do is observe the facts in an objective fashion to see that this is the case. You know, there's so many areas where we can point out that Trump isn't who he claims to be. We have done it over and over again to the point of it being ad nauseum. But at some point, we're going to have to reach a position where, as movement and as true conservatives, we won't tolerate these sorts of charlatans attempting to engage a hostile takeover of the conservative movement. What position has Trump actually committed to which one would say is steadfast and conservative? Immigration reform? We already know that he's not really committed to that at all either. I mean, Jeremy, I can't think of a single thing where he's truly a conservative.
Well, there isn't one, Randy. There isn't one at all.
So.
I mean, you brought up immigration reform. We've already had immigration reform. We've already had, what, 2, 3 naturalization acts. We have the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which a lot of people want to think, have this notion that it actually applies to people coming into the country and then gaining citizenship or automatically becoming citizens. Wrong. That only pertained to and was created because of states back after the Civil War were still punishing and criminalizing freed slaves. That 14th Amendment strictly pertains to the states having to recognize the sovereignty and citizenship of other citizens from other states. That's it. Period. But he wants to take these points and these stances on immigration reform or gun control or this or that, and the one we're going to be talking about tonight, this whole family medical leave, this maternity leave. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we could jump right into that. That's already been covered. Bill Clinton put that forth with the Family Medical Leave Act of, what, 2000? So, I mean,
it was one of the last things he did.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we already have legislation on all of these topics, all of these issues. And they want to keep rehashing this and wrenching down the teeth on these topics and these issues and laws. Why? What's the point? I'll tell you what the point is. Because the more they ratchet down the teeth on that, the heavier the boot gets on the neck of the American people. That's the whole point. It just goes to show that Donald Trump is nothing more than a Fabian. Him and his alt-Reich are nothing more than a bunch of jackbooted thugs. That's it. That's all it's ever been. It's right along with the Fabian mantra and agenda.
And it's something that they've done over and over again. And see, this is the problem. When you begin to betray your principles, or you never had principles to begin with, it just allows it to easily be put forth as though you are a conservative, when in fact what he's trying to do is irreparably redefine conservatism. And it's really going to come back to haunt us as a movement, because you know how the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media attempt to pigeonhole us with these erroneous fake wars on women, wars on minorities, etc., etc. It ties into this. And you see, what they'll try and do is play this off as being a war on women if you, as a conservative, don't support it. And then, even so, what it proves is that they aren't going far enough for the left. You see, that's always the trap that comes up. It's that the left never thinks we go far enough. You give them an inch, they take a mile, and they're going to whine about it each and every step of the way. It's predictable. Everything they do is predictable, and the fact that anybody can sit there and try and claim that Trump is a conservative, or that the tabernacle full of Lion Branch Trumpidians are conservative, just really are not paying attention to reality whatsoever. And of course, it's going to play out in a deleterious form. Because when you stop and think about it, what these people are literally doing is pushing us further to the left. It's as though Fabianism has metastasized in the body politique of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, and so they're going to try and say that that is conservative to push those points of view, when in fact it's not.
There's a huge issue with this whole maternity leave thing. There's two sides to this coin. Number one, I think the argument can be made that it's a form of population control. Okay, it's putting it the fact of not so much restricting the amount of population and keeping the numbers down, but it's encouraging people to have more kids than what they normally would have. You know, it's kind of emboldening, pushing ultimately this welfare state is basically what it comes down to. Saying, well, if you have a job, this family or this maternity leave act will prevent a woman from being fired because she gets pregnant. So it's going to encourage people to maintain their job, which they're going to become derelict in their job duties and descriptions, because let's face it, you and I both know that we have no idea what it's like to give birth to a child. However, we know people in our lives that have given birth to children, and multiple children in some cases, even 3 or 4. Even after one child, the woman's body, it starts to break down. It's not as strong as it used to be. So eventually, if they're encouraged, well, you're not going to get fired if you have kids, so go ahead and just breed like rabbits. And that way, you can't lose your job. That means it's holding a position for a person who is more capable of doing the job because you're no longer strong enough to do it. And it forces people, it's almost like it's forcing them to do this, to hold jobs, which is going to break down the economy, thus build up the welfare system. The other side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is people would look at it as a form of punishment against the women. Like you said, it brings up this whole war on women. Well, people just want women to become barefoot and pregnant and always working. What's the guy going to do? The man's not going to do anything. And we've seen this trend over the past 15 years of men becoming, house husbands, taking care of the kids while the woman goes out and works because, well, the women can do the job just as good as the man can, and they deserve equal pay and all this other. It's a catastrophe.
Here's the thing. In this, they are including tax breaks for those men who are so-called stay-at-home husbands. Again, creating this incentive. And I mean, I can understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it to where it's not violating equal protection. But here's the thing. What happened to self accountability and self responsibility? Those are the central pillars of our society. That is what has defined us as a nation and as a people. And whenever we break away from that, that is when you start to see things begin to break down. It's part of the reason why the government is pushing so far to get away from the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Again, it's all about taking away the onus of duty, obligation, but above all, responsibility. Because if you hold people responsible and accountable, it means that the government is not in full control. And I think that's literally what it boils down to, Jeremy, is that they are attempting to control, to have power consolidated and centralized in the hands of those who wish to have governmental control and power. But what does it ultimately mean for the societal fabric and framework of these United States of America? Ultimately, it comes down to it's tearing us apart at the seams. It's part of this rather nefarious notion of identity politics. And I think that also ties into semantics, where they're trying to play with words, trying to play with meanings to take away traditional values and institutions, such as the family and marriage. So why else would they push this as well?
Well, I want to make the argument right now that their attempt, like you brought it up, to prevent the violation of equal protection, well, it's impossible for them to do it this way. Absolutely impossible for them to do this way, because with them giving the tax breaks to these stay-at-home dads, they're creating a protected class. But they're also creating a protected class of women who get maternity leave and are going to be encouraged to ultimately have more kids. That's also a protected class. Anytime you create any protected class, even if you create one on both sides of the framework there, it still is not indicative of preserving equal protection, because now you're going to have two warring factions, men against women. Women are eventually going to get pissed off and say, you know what? We want the tax breaks too. We're the one carrying the burden, so to speak, because many of them will look at having children as a burden. Many of them do now. Now, this is why we have abortion and so on and so forth, but they're going to look at that as a quote-unquote burden and say, well, we're carrying the brunt of this for 9 months, we should get a tax break. But here's the thing, going back again, they already get tax breaks, the earned income credit, or the child earned income credit. That's a tax break. It's unconstitutional, but they get it. And then it's going to cause the men to say, well, okay, yeah, we're getting the tax breaks, but why can't we get some kind of paid medical leave and job security for whatever else? You know,
yeah, it's always what you run into with affirmative action. That's the downside of this so-called reverse discrimination. And it's been there ever since they've been pushing that, which has been, what, several decades now.
That's the biggest oxymoron of all, affirmative action.
Oh, I know, it really is. But the reason we're bringing this up, folks, is that Trump was at a rally a few days ago when his daughter Ivanka had convinced him to champion this issue. It's as though left-wing ideology is struggling to become a part of the central platform of the Republican Party. Of course, this makes sense when one recalls that the Trump family has never been conservative. They're about pushing their radical agenda come hell or high water, and of course that plays out to the great detriment to the real ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. But where's the so-called right-wing media on this? Rush Limbaugh was basically silent with regards to this. He didn't press a caller on the issue on his program the other day because he's thrown so much weight behind the mafioso quafioso. He just sat there as though there's nothing wrong with this position. Forcing people to pay for daycare and for maternity leave makes no sense. It's not in any way connected to the foundational image that our founding fathers dreamed of at the inception of this country some 235 plus years ago. Folks, we've always said here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that we didn't want you to take the things we are saying at face value. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and cue up a soundbite of Rush talking to this caller who seems so very enamored with the position put forth by Don Trumpolini. And keep in mind, this caller had proclaimed that he was a fiscal conservative. I mean, folks, you really can't make this stuff up, and I'm going to go ahead and cue that up now. So here we go.
Here's Richard in Lee Summit, Missouri, outside Kansas City. Great to have you, sir. I'm glad you waited. Hi.
Hey, Rush, proud Navy dad, dittos to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Same to you.
Hey, a lot of purist conservatives have started to criticize Trump's proposed incentives for child care and paid leave for the parents. And before they get too all bothered about that, I want them to consider that Trump's proposals for child care and maternity leave, that promotes and strengthens the family that we're always talking about being so important. And it by making it easier on the parents to have paid time off and child care costs and tax-free savings accounts that they can roll over for college, all that just builds the family. And it's something we need to consider if we're talking about the family being so important. We can invest in families that need help up to a certain extent where he's going to put the cutoffs and everything. But I think that would just really go so far in helping rebuild our society's fabric.
So to summarize, I'll ask you a question. You are not at all concerned about the nature and the substance of Trump's entitlement, his new entitlement proposal to use government money to shore up the family.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'm voting for Trump, and but I think that we spend so much money on studies and research and grants and things like that. We can invest in the family, the fabric of society.
So there you have it. There you have it. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I believe in using government entitlements to spend for this kind of stuff. That's the thing, folks. The people who are really supporting Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini are not conservative. That's what we've been saying here time and time again at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. There's just no way around that. It's disgusting to see, but we've been trying to warn you that this is not a conservative movement, that this is a hostile takeover of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, and it's disgusting to see. It really is.
I have a couple of things here with this, and I'll get to that lily-livered caller in just a second. But a few minutes ago, Randy, you mentioned that this whole topic was brought about and up for discussion at the suggestion of his daughter, Ivanka Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the whole premise behind this is for families, working families, to have paid maternity leave so that they can shore up their finances, put their kids through college and all this other stuff. When in the hell has Ivanka Trump ever worked a damn day in her life? Because
other
if
than
this
just
idea
being the starlet of his company, never.
The thing is, again, this idea, this is Fabianism right at its core. You have somebody who has never worked a day in their life, has lived off the coattails or the coiftails of her bleached skunk pelt wearing dilapidated father, never held a job a day in her life. What the hell is she even concerning herself or even throwing this up there for a topic for? Oh, because it's, philanthropism and, it's just the right thing to do. Shut up. Just shut up. Maybe you and Ann, Little Orphan Annie, Yap Yap, Coulter, Toto can go share a milk bone or something. Just shut up. You have no right or any authority to even bring something like this up. Now to the dilapidated caller. You're a fraud. An absolute fraud. You want to say you're a fiscal conservative? Fiscal conservatives actually root that ideology in the family being able to control their finances, the family budgeting their finances, and the government staying the hell out of their finances. But you want the government to utilize taxpayer money, i.e., my money, to pay for, oh, I don't know, if your wife gets pregnant and wants to take time off work, you want me to pay for her salary? Baruch you. That's how that works. Go
Well,
to
and
hell.
it goes to show that what these people are literally following is this collectivist mentality. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have always been collectivists, and we see that the alt-right is also collectivist. You see, it goes to their notion of trying to define nationalism based in tribalism, which really makes no sense when you stop and think about it, because it's the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution as well as our representative republic that define us, both as a nation and as a people. And it does not find itself rooted in racial identity or in identity politics or any of this just regurgitated tribalism. Rather, it's based on those immutable facts. Remember, when you look at the language that Thomas Jefferson pinned down in the Declaration of Independence, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they have been endowed by their Creator with certain fundamental and unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." You see, that speaks volumes as to who we really are, both as a nation and as a people, and has nothing to do with tribalism. That's where the alt-right comes out and just seems to come unglued with respect to the Constitution as well as all of our other foundational documents. They loathe and despise it because ultimately they realize it does not play out into their overarching global view with respect to how the system works and what it is that we are trying to achieve.
Sure. Again, it points to the fact that it comes down to the family unit. This is just another way for them to give this facade that, oh, we're doing this for the families, to embolden the families. It's like that dilapidated caller, said, well, it gives a chance of families to be able to, put money back for college and to do this and to curb their finances. Well, you know what? I paid for college myself. In fact, I'm still paying for college myself. My parents didn't pay for college. They offered to. They what little bit that they could have put forth, but I told them no. I'm going to do this myself. This is a choice I made. I'm going to do it. I want to do this myself because it's for my own personal achievement and responsibility. It's not my parents' responsibility to pay for college for me. Okay? So, again, this is just taking away and it's instilling this idea and it's splitting the grain of the woodwork of the family that it's planting this notion into the children that, you can rely on your parents for everything. In fact, why stop at your parents? Why not rely on everybody else for everything? That's what it boils down to. And when they get the people to have that notion and live off that notion to where everybody has to rely on everybody else, again, that's that collectivism that you speak of. It's like, what was it, Jamestown, where that one winter people nearly starved to death because everybody was pulling together, doing the gardening, providing the food and this and that, and all of a sudden people started to get sick, and people just stopped doing the work, but yet nobody knew how to fend for themselves because everybody did everything for each other. Now, I'm all for charity. Charity is a great thing. In fact, it's encouraged. But there's a difference between charity and collectivism.
Oh, there absolutely is. There absolutely is. And, Jeremy, this is staggering. It leaves me wondering what on earth has happened to the so-called conservative movement in this country. It's as though we've gone from being a movement that stood for limited government, self-responsibility, and accountability to one that is essentially the Me Too movement. Our leadership hasn't stood for anything for far too long now. This is the result that comes about as a direct consequence. Truth is, our founding fathers would be appalled with the direction that this nation is headed right now. They wouldn't recognize what so-called conservatives are pushing for now. Why? Because the conservatives are abandoning the principles that our founders believed were worth fighting and dying for. Again, it brings my attention to the notion of sacred honor. Sacred honor means that the people who have been endowed by their Creator, the God of nature himself, with certain fundamental and inalienable rights were expected to be able to care for themselves, which ties into what you were just saying there, and families were supposed to provide for themselves, not turn to the government to carve out special places for them. This is absurd, and it really is a tragic position that the United States of America finds herself in with respect to this. Donald Trump is pushing the party much further to the left. People seem fine with this, and a lot of it stems from their unexplainable fear of Hillary. Here's the thing, folks. If Hillary is as sick as they are proclaiming, then why continue to support Donnie? If Hillary is really that sick, then there's no reason to believe that she'd be able to carry out half of the frightening things and nightmarish things they proclaim she's capable of. Don't get me wrong, I can't stand the witch, but seriously, this fear of Hillary is very irrational.
Here's the thing with Hillary Clinton. You know, Randy, you and I have come across various individuals that have asked us, on your guys' show, why don't you talk about and point out the things, how bad Hillary is? We don't have to. She's done a fine job of that herself. Okay? We don't have to point out the discrepancies of Hillary because we know what she's all about. We know that enemy. We're trying to bring to light the discrepancies and the dangers of the so-called unknown enemy. People want to say, well, Trump's an unknown. He's detached from all that political stuff and he's not a politician. That makes him even more dangerous. And if people want to sit here and say that Trump is not a politician, they're dead wrong. Dead wrong. Because all the dealings that he's had with both sides of the aisle and with even declared enemies of the United States and other countries that have harbored them, dealings with people like George Soros, the Russian mob, so on and so forth. People don't want to acknowledge that because they're so afraid of Hillary. And here's the thing. If Hillary Clinton is so sick to where she can't continue to run in the campaign, then you're going to see her VP pick, Mr. Kane, take her place. Now, in that instance, that would be the only way that Trump would be able to win the election because he's gained so much ground. However, it's going to create an even bigger problem because not only is Trump a megalomaniac now, he's going to become a megalomaniac that the world has never seen before. You think Hitler was bad, or Stalin, or Mao, or Mussolini, Ho Chi Minh, Castro, you think they were megalomaniacs and sociopaths? Wait until you see what happens if Donald Trump wins if Hillary drops out of the race. Because he's going to say, look, I've done it. His ego is going to swell so big, there's not enough skunk pelts in this world to bleach to cover the gaping, baldy quap that he has. It's just not going to happen. His head's going to swell so big, he's going to become the uber tyrannical piece of crap that he is set out to be. Hitler would be quaking in his boots if he were alive, because that is going to feed his ego, and he's already egotistical. He's going to become out of control. The Democrats are not going to allow that to happen because they will lose control of him. They control him now. People say, oh, he's uncontrolled by anybody. Wrong. They control him. They control him, and if Hillary drops out of the race, or if Donald Trump wins because Hillary drops out, Democrats will never be able to control him. Nobody will be able to control him. It would be like a non-directional wind-up trucker with road rage.
Because it would allow him to just be unleashed. And that's the thing. That's what he's wanting. He's wanting to be unleashed. Recall that when his father, Freddie, was telling him not to cross the bridge into Manhattan and to just stay in Brooklyn, it was because he didn't want him to be unconstrained. There was always this sense that Trump needed to be controlled. Part of the reason why he got sent to that preppy military academy was because he had an out-of-control temper, and he just thought that nothing applied to him when it came to the rules. I mean, that's what we're seeing. That's why he is so dangerous. It's because he has this ballooning ego which has no limitation or restriction whatsoever. And when you think about the highest office in the land, it's supposed to be one of restraint. Our entire federal government is based on this notion of limited powers. In other words, it has to trace any legitimate authority to enact or to be legitimate to a specific power that was enumerated by the clear and concise language of the Constitution itself. Now, of course, as we look at the modern state of affairs with respect to our federal government, we see that it is totally departed from that and detached from that, and that's part of the problem. The election of president was never meant to be as all-encompassing as it has become. And the reason it is so all-encompassing as it is now is because we have allowed the president to operate so far out of the purview of the Constitution that it would be unrecognizable to our founding fathers. That is something that I think we could ill afford to let continue, and that's certainly why we shouldn't let someone like Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini ever get control of the reins of political power, because it would plunge this nation further into the depths of depravity and despair.
Well, and all that started, I mean, we can go back to, we've traced this back before, even with John Adams, with the Alien Sedition Act. That infuriated so many of our founding fathers, but it went through. We have Marbury versus Madison, again, is kind of a response to certain things that it bolstered up the office of the presidency. And then let's flash forward a little bit to Abraham Lincoln, who was a tyrant himself, suspending the Constitution, who was landing him, had him deported out of the northern states because he rose up in Congress and said, "You're a tyrant. You have declared yourself, you want to declare yourself to be a tyrant." Lincoln had him arrested and brought up on charges illegally. Then we had Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, FDR, LBJ, Carter, Clinton, Reagan, in not so much completely, but to a certain very small degree in a second term with the whole amnesty thing. We can look at Daddy Bush, read my lips, no new taxes kind of thing. And then
Persian Gulf now.
Persian Gulf. Cucumber.
1,000 pints of liquor.
Yeah, broccoli. And all these things. And it's just been progressing and progressing and progressing on and on and on. Why? Because, like you mentioned, we the people have failed to stop it. And now, when does the point come to where we say enough is enough and this has to stop? Are we going to allow this election cycle to be, we'll give it one more chance? I'm not willing to do that. I wasn't willing to do that in 2012. I came to that realization the night of the elections in 2008. I'm not willing to take a chance with my life, my rights, or the rights of anybody else. Why? Because, as we've said so many times, our rights are non-negotiable. And when you take a chance with something like this, chancing something is negotiating. It's negotiating. I am not willing to continue to negotiate, nor should anybody negotiate anything when it comes to our rights, ever.
Exactly. And, speaking of negotiating with Mark Levin, we recently shared our thoughts with respect to Mark Levin changing his tune because of that fear of Hillary. We wondered why he could so easily turn away from the principled stance he took against Trump the moment that Texas Senator Ted Cruz dropped out of the race back in May. It seems that he is struggling with it. But while he claimed that he could not be held accountable for the stupid things that Trump and his surrogates say, I just don't see it that way. Neither will the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media see it that way. But Levin was fired up and angry about the quaffernity leave. He was saying that the system sucks and it's one that's not even conservative. Of course, this really shouldn't have come as any surprise to Levin, or to the late one instead of the great one, because he's late to everything, because Trump is no conservative. That's been the problem we've had with him going back a year now. Yet Levin is driven by fear. We, on the other hand, refuse to be driven by this unreasonable and all-consuming fear of Hillary. Mark really seemed beside himself with respect to the way that Trump was pushing for this sort of unexplainable maternity leave. He parroted all of the old conservative lines with it, but what does it matter anymore? Once you decide to sell your soul, can there really be any coming back from it without some serious penance? I don't think it's possible, really. But again, I'll cue up the soundbite of Levin's reaction, and then we'll delve more deeply into it. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and cue that up now.
But first of all, I want to ask you a question. Do you think the federal government should pay for 6 weeks maternity leave? Isn't this something the Democrats have been pressing for years? In other words, do you think you should pay for 6 weeks maternity leave? Do we not have enough entitlements? Is the debt not big enough? Is the government not big enough? Is the government not involved enough in our families and so forth? This is from The Hill, but it's published elsewhere as well. Donald Trump will call for 6 weeks of paid maternity leave for new mothers in a policy address he's going to give tonight, breaking with GOP orthodoxy. I don't know that it breaks with GOP orthodoxy, but whatever orthodoxy, this is unaffordable. The GOP presidential nominee will outline the policy as part of a speech sketching out his child care plans as Trump reaches out to female voters. You notice how Republicans always have to use government like liberals to reach out to this voter or that voter?
Well, that's what we tried to tell you, Mark. That's why we tried to say you shouldn't be reaching out to the mafioso quafioso, that he's not conservative. I hate to say it, but this almost plays out like a desperate attempt on the part of the late one to try and secure his audience. I'm sure he lost a great many when he decided to throw his support behind the mafioso quafioso, but you see, it's all just a bit too little too late. I hate to be harsh that way, but that's the fact of the matter. There's really no way around this for him. None.
How can he be upset or become offended if people are going to stop listening to him? See, this is right along the same mantra with Rush. Rush got upset and irritated because people were, not listening to him anymore. They dropped listening to his program. But see, the thing is, when you adopt something, whether it's a lie, well, let's just stick with that. Let's say that you hear a lie from somebody else, and then you repeat that lie, you put your own spin on it, and then you get mad because someone, brings you to the truth and catches you up in that lie. You get mad, well, I heard it from somebody else, so it's really not my lie. It's somebody else's lie. I'm just repeating it. Well, guess what? If you repeat the lie of somebody else, that makes you still a liar. It still makes you a fraud. Okay? And people need to understand this. And the late one, Mark Levin, needs to be accepting of that responsibility. Mr. Conservative, constitutional attorney, but yet he gets upset or a little bent out of shape. Well, you can't say that to me. Come on, I wrote a book. I don't care what you wrote. It doesn't matter. Someone should take the monkey and the crayons away from you. Stop it.
When you shoot your credibility like that, it really does not leave you any room to come back.
No.
Because one of the things that they teach in law school is the only thing you've really got is your credibility. And, it can take a lifetime to build up that credibility, yet you can destroy it in an instant. And when you destroy it, it can be nigh impossible to get it back. It can be nigh impossible to rebuild it. And I fear that's exactly the problem that Mark Levin is going to run into now. He has burnt bridges. He has betrayed his audience, and his audience is rightfully upset with him. I don't blame them for that, just as I'm sure the vast majority of our cherished listening passengers and audience members are not blaming him for that as well, because it is deeply rooted into a major negative problem. That is, we have seen this election cycle become the election cycle of betrayal. It has become the election cycle where it shows the true colors of people. I suppose that could be the one silver lining of this quaff cloud that has been the bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Bulgarian, Donald J. Trump or John Barron or John Miller, whichever name he's going by today. It's that it is letting us know who the true movement conservatives are. And it is also exposing those who are going out on a limb to just make a profit off of this. And I'm not sure that Levin is quite as much of a sellout as, say, like Michael Wiener Savage and Laura Inkampf or Sean Hannity, or I even hate to add him, but he deserves it, Lush Bimbo.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to what we mentioned. Self-accountability and the responsibility that individual has to undertake in order to be held accountable. If it's like the old adage saying, when you point your finger at somebody else, you've got three more pointing back at you. Guess what? Late one, Randy and I are just two of those fingers pointing back at you. You see, you've had a great thing going, and then it's almost like you're a prepubescent teenager, just blew his wad right there, just gone. The first time of reaching a climax. See, you climaxed before you should have, because you were not thinking. You need to stop. Now, is there a modicum of forgiveness that can be given? Well, it's not up to me to forgive people in that nature, for that sense, okay? Because the person has to come to grips with themselves first. He has to be held accountable first. He has to accept that responsibility, because then and only then is he going to be able to restore his credibility and work his way back into the good graces of people that actually held him in high esteem before. You talk about the credibility, it takes, essentially a lifetime to gain, but only, seconds to destroy. The same thing goes with trust. Trust and credibility work hand in hand. We have this, at work, Randy, we have this flyer, this little poster that says, trust takes a lifetime to accomplish and gain, but only seconds to lose. See, credibility and trust are two of those things to where once they're gone, you'll never be able to regain them in their full regard ever again. Because there's always, once that happens, once you lose the trust of people, once your credibility is gone and destroyed, it's never going to be the same. It's never going to come back to full amounts. Why? Because it places and creates that seed of doubt. There will always be that what if. What if he's just doing this to try and win us back, and then what if he's going to do this again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can't trust that he's going to stay true to his convictions when he didn't stay true to them to begin with. And then here's what I don't get. Why do we need government-mandated maternity leave? Why should we be penalized in the private sector for this? It honestly makes no sense to me. We've managed to get by on our own without it for 2+ centuries that the United States of America has been in existence. It just seems like more encroachment, less liberty, etc. When did America become a nation of dependence? I thought we sought to be independent. Well, that's the thing. we seemingly no longer value the very attributes that propelled us to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. To me, that's a great tragedy. It shows that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have managed to pervert society to such a degree that we have lost sight of who we really and truly are as a nation and as a people. I don't think that's something we can afford to ignore. We must have an answer for this. Of course, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, know what that answer is. That answer has been with us since the founding of our nation some 235 plus years ago. That answer of which I speak is none other than the United States Constitution. It has been the guiding light for this nation for all that time. And when you recall that it is the longest contiguous or uninterrupted running constitutional document in all world history, that's truly something to behold. It shows that our founding fathers possessed infinite wisdom and foresight when it came to the founding of the United States. Yet, at this juncture in our history, we've become complacent. We've lost sight of that which makes us great. As a result, we turn away from our time-honored values, principles, institutions, and deeply held beliefs in exchange for a system that cannot work. Why? Because it is not based in the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our shared United States Constitution, as well as our representative Republican form of government.
See, and people have this idea that, well, the Constitution is quaint and antiquated. It no longer works. Well, here's the thing. You can't cast off something aside that has worked for so long and then say, oh, all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work. It's antiquated. Some of those things that were written back then don't apply to today because things have changed and blah, blah, blah. So you're looking for something else that's going to work. Well, what you're looking to has never worked anywhere. Anywhere. Show me one thriving, flourishing communist or socialist government that has ever worked. One.
Utopia.
Just name one. You know why it doesn't work? Because it is completely polar opposite of the principles of the Constitution. And people want to get away from it. Why? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Is it the most perfect document that we have? It's the most perfect document that we as humans could come up with. That's about it. Can it be better? Sure. That's why the Founding Fathers left it open with Article 5 to be ratified, to be amended. Because there are going to be things that come up that need to be addressed constitutionally. Why? Because it's human nature for people to evolve. Their thinking evolves, their behavior evolves. Not so much physically people don't evolve, but it's the way that it's their behavior traits. Well, I'm aging, but that's just it's not in the Darwinism sense. You know, coming from pond scum up to monkeys and this and that, which has never made sense to me. But evolution actually does exist, but it pertains to thinking, reasoning, logic, and behavior. That's what it boils down to. And if the further we get away from behaving and thinking and rationalizing things in accordance with the Constitution, we are de-evolving. We are going backwards.
Back towards totalitarianism. And that's so many apparently in America want to fall back onto authoritarianism, which is shocking because that is not an inherent or intrinsic part of our national DNA. It's not part of who we are. It's never been a part of what our foundational image was, but people have just become so complacent they don't want to think for themselves. They want the government to control everything. And that brings us right back to this paid maternity leave thing that was Ivanka's plan. So here's what Ivanka's plan offers. It offers 6 weeks paid maternity leave, tax deductions for stay-at-home parents, whether they be mother or father, and dependent care savings accounts for families. The argument they make is that America is the only industrialized country in the world that does not offer federally mandated family leave, and Trump's proposals mark a significant shift from traditional GOP positions against mandating paid leave. There's a reason why the GOP traditionally rejected this position. It's because it forces people. That's the thing. Mandated being mandated is the problem I have with it. Just listen to the language that's used with respect to it. To mandate something is to force it. It's not voluntary or optional. Why do we have to mandate everything? You see, it's like the misnomer of being pro-choice. It's not about choice. It's about power and control. This links back to something we've been explaining since our first episode. Words truly have meaning. And when you ignore those meanings or attempt to change them, that's when things begin to go wrong. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want words to continue to hold their traditional meanings. It's all part of their diabolical plan to redefine what our society stands for and represents. It's sad to see that the Republican Party has fallen into this trap, but what it comes down to is an understanding of our Constitution, and people may wonder why we give it such weight and importance. Here's the reason why. Without the Constitution, we have no form of law. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, which is one of the fundamental pillars of what it is to be an American. That's why we say it's the United States being a nation of laws and not of men, boiling down to the notion of equal protection under the law as well as due process under the law.
Well, sure, and it also goes into privileges and immunities, which, Randy, you and I have had numerous discussions regarding that courts, anytime something's presented and based on privileges and immunities, the privileges and immunities clause, they dismiss it, they throw it out. They don't want to hear it because it would force them to set precedent to where many other things can be changed, like mandated laws, mandated requirements. They don't like that. The courts are just as complicit with this as the politicians that are running for president in office and the ones that are holding office now. And they're just as complicit as the American people that are standing by and allowing it to happen. Now, I want to point to something that you said that it struck me as kind of funny, but at the same time, very poetic, so to speak, in proving that the Trump family is nothing but a bunch of frauds and liars. Ivanka Trump said that we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have mandated family leave, paid medical leave, or paid family medical leave.
Mm-hmm.
Again, at the onset of the show, did I not mention the Family Medical Leave Act of 2000?
Right, you did.
So if we're the only industrialized nation, I guess the FMLA of 2000 doesn't exist anymore. I guess it's just that was a myth. It never existed. So when they make these comments, and see, people need to understand, they're able to make these comments, and they're able to get away with these and pull these off because the American people have not paid attention to history. And 2000 was not all that long ago. To some people, it seems like a lifetime, but it really wasn't all that long ago. Because have people forgotten about it? Of course they have, because they're so wrapped up in this fear of Hillary that anything that the Trump dynasty and dilapidated derelicts can say is the gospel to them. Randy, I'm inclined to go searching out for the Trumpernacle Choir and their whole thing of, yeah, but Trump, the whole, Trumpian monk chanting. And it's just, it's unreal. I mean, hell, it was 16 years ago. I was 20 years ago. I was 20 years old when that came into effect. Well, guess what? I had a family at that time. I was working. In fact, I was actually injured on my job. Did I get paid medical leave? No, I had workman's compensation. So I guess workman's comp doesn't come into this either. That doesn't exist. But yet, if you're going to be a small business owner or a contractor, you're required by laws, state laws in several states, to carry workman's comp insurance and to actually pay into it out of your pocket. The business owner, not your employees, you.
Yeah.
So again, this
Yeah.
is doing nothing more than wrenching down the teeth and putting a stiffer boot on the necks of the American people. And they want to talk
Which-
about the economy. Here's the problem. They bring up the issue of the economy, but yet they're wanting to implement things that's going to destroy it even worse than what it is.
Yeah. And it's all about power and control, as I said, because what it comes down to is that these people want to control the facets of our daily lives. It's why Alexis de Tocqueville said that anyone who supports any flavor, form, or facet of socialism is actually pushing for New Age feudalism. Because when you stop and think about it, it's essentially creating this caste system in which you are not allowed to move through the stratus of each caste, and therefore it's creating two separate elite classes, or one that's elite, one that isn't. And therefore, the government is going to be in a class all unto itself, whereas we are the ones that are expected to follow the rules. And so that will play out to our detriment. And of course, all of this is designed to play out to our detriment. And I want to point to something else with respect to this so-called maternity leave. The Wall Street Journal was quick to point out that Republicans have been slow to back Donald Trump's paid maternity leave plan, as well they should be. This sort of madness is not conservative. It goes along the warnings that we've been providing with respect to Trump for over a year now. Folks, you cannot ignore this. Yet, that's exactly what the Lion Branch Trumpidians will do as they cower in their tabernacle. It comes down to making a decision as to what we believe for the nation is important. Do we believe that there should be a federally mandated maternity leave, or do we believe that people should be free to contract that for themselves? That's the sort of question that needs to be asked with respect to this push. It's just, who is the one who should be making these sorts of decisions? Of course, my personal belief is that it should be left to the people. That makes sense when you go back to the opening lines to the preamble of our shared United States Constitution. We the people created the government, so the government mandating this sort of thing at the expense of we the people seemingly goes against everything that we stand for as a nation and as a people. There's really no way of getting around this. It's an essential part of who we are, both as a nation and a people. Again, I'm reminded of self-responsibility. It's as though everyone is afraid to take responsibility for their own words, deeds, and actions. Of course, that's been the plan of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists for quite some time. Recall that a few months back, the Obama regime had come forth and said that we shouldn't call felons felons anymore. It's this sort of duplicitous nonsense that propagates the positions that the Trump camp is taking with respect to paid maternity leave. It really is.
There's another issue that comes along with this. See, precedent has been set with regard to anything pertaining to health care or anything pertaining to insurance or compensation, so on and so forth, with Obamacare. When Obamacare was illegally ruled to be constitutional by that dingleberry John Roberts, 2 times violated the Constitution, that kind of sets a precedent to where, okay, they want this paid maternity leave act. If Trump becomes president, what's stopping him from writing legislation or having legislation written and then forcing the Congress to put it in front of the Supreme Court in such a way to where the Supreme Court mandates that this is constitutional and it has to be done? Now, guess what happens? Now you have a violation of the 8th Amendment, because the way that would work, and the only way they would be able to make it stick, is to roll it into the FICA aspect of this, where Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security tax, all this other stuff is taken out. Those taxes will go up in order to cover the expense of the paid maternity leave. Well, guess what, folks? Everything with FICA is unconstitutional. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. It's where in the Constitution is there any authority for that kind of legislation or mandates to be put forth? There is
Article
none.
non-section existent, clause 0.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
So therefore, that's the only way they're going to be able to do this. Why? Because again, it's mandating, and it's mandating it in such a small dose. Well, my taxes aren't going to go up that much, and it'd be nice to have it there in case my wife or in case I get pregnant and I can't be fired from my job and blah blah blah. Speaking when I say I get pregnant,
I know,
in terms of
but
a woman.
the image is funny.
But again, they become complacent with it. It's okay because it's not that big of a hassle. Oh, we have to pay a little bit more taxes. Well, at least we have a wall to keep us safe, and Mexico paid for it, and blah blah blah. Shut the hell up. Just stop. If you want to keep allowing these little nuggets of mandating tyrannical crap to be dropped into your cereal bowl and you keep spooning it into your skull cave because it's not that much, I can stomach this and it's just small doses, I can take it in small doses, or maybe I'll put a little bit of sugar on it because it make it taste better. Even though it's crap, you're still eating crap. Stop eating crap. Just stop.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy, seeing as you are in Flint, Michigan, apparently Trump had a recent flap there with a local black minister. Apparently, Trump is now saying that the minister is a nervous wreck and that he doesn't have anything of importance to say. This is absurd and is, of course, Trump attempting to save face after this man shot him down. Why would this come as a surprise to anyone, though? We know that Trump goes out on a limb to attack anyone who has the gall to question him. It's one of the reasons why we find him to be such a disastrous choice for GOP nominee. I mean, if you disagree with him, that's grounds for him to come forth and attack you in merciless fashion. Again, it's because he doesn't want to be held accountable for his words, deeds, and actions. To my mind, this is a pattern of behavior that simply cannot be ignored. Trump has all of the markings of a totalitarian. There's nothing about him that shows diplomacy or restraint. Now, for many of his followers, that might be something that they consider a bit of a strength. However, when you realize that the office of president is one that is supposed to be limited, a man like Trump is the last sort of person you'd ever really want to entrust with the reins of political power. There's no way around that, folks. There's no way to sugarcoat or candy coat that. It's just the fact of the matter. So apparently, Trump is angry that this minister or pastor asked him about the Flint water situation. The pastor went on to invite Trump to have a conversation about it, but Trump didn't think that was necessary. As a result, Trump is taking heat from the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. For Trump, that's something he can't take. He loathes any and all forms of criticism against him.
Here's the thing. There have been numerous individuals who have gotten sick, and even some of them who have died, because of this water crisis, or this issue that we have. And why do we have the issue? Because, well, the city and county government decided that they were going to treat our water system, just to bring people up to speed. They were going to treat water that they were pumping through their system with certain chemicals in order to dilute or get rid of the bacteria found in the Flint River, because that's where they were drawing the water source from. We were getting our water from Detroit, paying a hefty price for it, I might add. It was really financially cumbersome for a lot of people. So the city of Flint, okay, well, we'll go ahead and change it. We'll be able to cut water costs down. We can, their thinking was okay, but when people started to get sick and people started to question it, they started to bury different things. They didn't want to do this. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to take these things seriously. So eventually, the pipelines that were used to distribute the water throughout the city were lead pipes but the chemicals they used to treat the water eroded the lining inside the lead pipes, which exposed the lead and caused Legionnaire's disease, amongst several other illnesses, and people have actually died from it. Now, everybody's brought up to speed. When is it ever presidential when you have a situation like that, when somebody has died because of a crisis, because of an incident, and you don't want to talk about it because someone brings it up, because you don't think you need to talk about it, because you think you're better than that? I'm going to tell you right now, the city of Flint, what Trump has done, he has actually created more Democratic voters to do that. And I think he did that on purpose. Again, going back to this whole thing, he doesn't really want to win. This is all just another one of his 1 year long, very, very bigly QVC infomercials for this crap that he's trying to sell. That's all it is. So he's created more Democratic voters. And I'm going to tell you right now, Randy, I've actually talked to you about this. Where my wife works, it happens to be a union place. Everybody that she's talked to, her co-workers and whatnot, they're not voting for Trump or Hillary, which is fascinating to me because it's the UFCW. It's a union. Union voters typically sway towards the Democrats. They're not wanting anything to do with Hillary. In fact, many of them, my wife said, many of them are looking to cast their vote for third-party candidate Evan McMullin. Now, I don't know that much about Evan McMullin. I've looked him up. I've done a little bit of research on him. There's what I've read on the issues. There's a few discrepancies, but again, I'm not going to agree with everybody. I had discrepancies with Cruz. But I would think that this individual, in his capacity, would be far better than the greater of two evils, or the less that Hillary and Trump are. People want to jump on this bandwagon of the lesser of two evils. Well, we're going to do a little bit more research on Evan McMullin, but I would say as it stands right now, why can't we have the lesser of three evils? Because to me, what I've read about him, he's a proponent for the Constitution. He talks about the Constitution, of which Trump and Hillary, neither of them do. At least he's speaking on the Constitution. That is enough. I would rather rest my vote with him at this point. But again, that may change before November. The more I research him, and I encourage everybody to research out all the candidates, any viable candidate. So it just comes to the point of these individuals. I'm a unifier of the party. No, you're not. You are a destructor. You are a damned quaffviathan, is what you are.
Yep. Well, there is some solace we can take away from all of this. It's being reported that the mass media has lost the trust of the American people. That makes sense to me because they have gone out of their way to continuously push this agenda that truly has no place in an open, honest, but above all free society like that of the United States of America. The people have essentially had it. Who can blame them? I know that I certainly do not. We are in an era where the media thinks they can get away with almost anything and almost any untruth. They've done it time and again. They've never been held accountable for it in the past either. And so they continue to push this as if it's the truth. However, the people have caught on to it. While social media is a double-edged sword, it does free us from the usual constraints of the media. It means that the people can now, more easily than ever, verify the stories that are being conveyed to them by the press. I think this is part of the reason why Obama wants to give away control of the internet to some bureaucratic body that is not beholden to our traditional rights and liberties as safeguarded by the Constitution. It's Texas Senator Ted Cruz who has taken the lead for defending our rights again. He is doing everything in his power to yet again stand up for the American people. Again, to my mind, this clearly delineates the problem that we are facing with respect to this election cycle. We rejected the one man who was actually in our corner. I fear that this will play out dreadfully in November, but actions have consequences, and this election cycle is the consequence of the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, betraying the people over and over again. They have been pushed to a state of raw emotionalism which really doesn't bode well for them. The reason being is that it leaves them susceptible to the twisted machinations of con men and frauds like Trump. The American people demand and deserve better than this. They truly do.
You know, that's a prime example of sacred honor.
It is.
Prime example of sacred honor, and here's why. Because everybody in this country that has disparaged, defamed, slandered, and insulted and attacked Ted Cruz and his family, guess what? I'm willing to bet that 95% of them all use social media. 95% of them use the internet. 95% of them have laptops, smartphones, other gadgets and devices that they utilize to engage in the World Wide Web. And even though they've besmirched him, they've insulted him, they've attacked him, he is still standing up to defend their constitutional rights. That, folks, is sacred honor above any and all things else. Because even though you've kicked him, you've spit in his face, you've defamed him, you've attacked him, he is still willing to go to bat for you and defend your rights. Just like Randy and I are still willing and will always be willing to defend your rights, even though we may not agree with you, even though you may attack us and levy death threats against us. We will still defend your right and all rights as American citizens. That's what sacred honor is. Now, can anybody tell me or show me any instance where Donald Trump has actually stood up for an individual's rights? Anybody's rights.
Never.
Even
Never.
the people that support him, that are willing to shoot themselves in the face and still vote for him if he told them to shoot themselves. When? One instance. It doesn't exist.
No, of course not. Of course not. It doesn't exist because he never has. He's never been about the people. That's never been his interest. He's always been about himself. That's always been his focus. And speaking of focus, guess who else has started to suffer a plunge in ratings? The NFL. This shouldn't come as a surprise either. After Roger Goodell went out there and supported the rantings and ravings of Kaepernick, he should suffer as a result. This is part of what we mean when we say that you must be willing to accept the consequences of your words, deeds, and actions. That's something that people like Roger Goodell simply don't seem to understand. They want to be able to have their cake and to eat it too. But that's not how things work in this world. We have to be self-accountable and self-responsible. That's how our founding fathers would expect us to be. However, these people are diametrically opposed to that. It's as though they want to hold others accountable for their own shortcomings. I think that's what the major problem with Trump is. Have you noticed that he never wants to accept responsibility for his own words, deeds, and actions? And that he never wants to be held accountable for what he says or does? He even said that his voters won't hold him accountable for what he says or does, what Jeremy just alluded to. That's the major problem with him. He thinks he can get away with anything. On the other hand, that's the problem with Hillary Clinton, too. She thinks she can do or say anything and not be held accountable for it. That's certainly the message that has been put forth by people like Trey Gowdy and others who have failed in their efforts to hold her accountable for what she's done. When no one is held accountable except for the people themselves, that leads to the growing lack of trust that haunts our government today.
You know, Randy, I have this thing about me to where I always give people little pet names, and we've done it numerous times here on the show, and I've got one for Colin Kaepernick. Now, I can say this, people can say, well, you're just attacking him, you're going down to his level. Well, see, I'm willing to be held responsible for what I'm about to say. My new name for him is Colin Crappy Neck. And here's why. His head is shoved so far up his rectum. The name fits. Colin Crappy Neck. It's perfect. Because here's an individual that complains about people being oppressed, complains about the way that police treat individuals, to do this, to do this. You know what? When was the last time you took any of your millions of dollars, colon crappy neck, and have donated it to causes that, oh, I don't know, kind of incentivize individuals to not go out and commit strong-armed robberies of party stores and little, shopping stores and stuff, and then end up getting shot dead by police because they're stupid? When did you ever do that? How much money have you funneled into the inner workings of Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, or in the inner cities, for crime prevention or youth activities after school to keep kids off of streets, all these other things? How much money have you funneled into that? How much money have you donated to support police officers that actually stand guard in your stadiums when you toss around a dead pig's skin playing football, you talentless hack, you fraud?
I have the answer.
Reprobate.
I have the answer. He never has. He never has. That's the thing. I think this all relates back to exactly what it is we need to do to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity. That is, we must foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights. In so doing, we can begin to truly hold these people accountable for what it is they're seeking to do to us, both as a nation and as a people. Unless and until we begin to take these actions, we're going to continue to see these sorts of things haunt this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Trump represents what happens when we lose sight of that. He is the epitome of what happens when you lose your bearings. That's what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been working so meticulously towards for the past century and a half. They want us to have this disillusionment with all that is of importance in this nation. That's why Cloward and Piven developed the system that they did back in the 1950s and 60s. It was to overwhelm us so that we would turn to the government to solve a problem that government itself created in the first place. When it appears that all law and order has been abandoned, the people will begin to seek security. In other words, they'll become willing to sacrifice essential liberties for a fleeting and false sense of security. This is the very sort of thing that Benjamin Franklin told us to avoid. Unfortunately, it seems that there are more Americans today who would rather see a form of totalitarianism take over as opposed to standing up for the God-given rights. This is the path that will lead to fascism if we're not careful. Therefore, what we need to ask ourselves is whether this is the path we should take. Because I think that the answer to this rather rhetorical question should be both open and obvious. The answer is that we should never abandon our principles. It is our principles, or rather, those principles that ground us, that ensure that we remain the people that our founding fathers expected us to be. In other words, that we promote a virtuous republic as they intended since the inception of this nation some 235 plus years ago.
I believe it was Ronald Reagan that said the most detrimental or fearful words that are ever spoken are, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
And I'm here to help, yep.
Yeah, well, those are no longer detrimental or fearful words in the mindset of individuals. They're welcoming words. These individuals are happy to hear those words. They can't wait for someone to knock on their door as if it was Ed McMahon presenting them with a Publishers Clearinghouse prize, saying, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help, and I'm going to give you food stamps, $7,000 of food stamps a week for the rest of your life." What the hell? Why? Why would anybody want to succumb to that? Why would people become so complacent? Whatever happened to people, the fighting spirit, the individualism that burns deep inside with each and every one of us? We are all self-sufficient. We all have the capabilities of being self-sufficient. And the longer we fail to embrace that, the longer we fail to implement that, And the longer we fail to stand up and say no, the most universal word that is known throughout the entire world, has the same meaning everywhere. No, meaning it's not going to happen. No Trump, never Trump. Period. Never means never. No means no. And you, again, I know people have heard that before. No means no. You know, this anti-rape stuff, this feminism, you know, crap that went on when no means no, and woman empowerment about saying, well, you know, just because we're married, you know, we can't have, you know, we can't, you know, engage in making love because I don't want to, and no means no. No, that again was twisted and bastardized by the Fabian left. It was all done to curtail and brainwash people. Again, no means no when you're willing to accept responsibility for saying it, when you're willing to hold yourself accountable, and when you're willing to stand up for your rights and the rights of others. No means no. You will not trample on my rights. You will not trample on Randy's. You will not trample on our cherished listening passengers' rights. And you will not trample on the rights of the Trump-tardians. You will not trample on the rights of the people that support the whore of Babylon, Hillary Clinton. You will not trample on the rights of anybody. No means no.
Yep. Keeping all of this in mind, it's important that we stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity. Because that's what Jeremy was alluding to right there. We are the only ones who have been endowed with the authority and the responsibility to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity. No one else can accomplish this for us. That's by the very design of our representative republic. Our founding fathers expected us to take the proactive role in maintaining and safeguarding our essential liberties, and that's exactly what we'll do. That's the only choice that is available to us. Again, folks, that is why we produce these shows. We do so to empower you, that you should be able to stand up, and should also be the goal of anyone who wants to uplift the people. While people like Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin may abandon that time-honored principle, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, will never abandon those principles. We love what this nation stands for far too much to allow these hucksters and charlatans to win. Remember that the nation, the Constitution, this very republic, belongs to none other than we the people. We are the ones who ordained it and created it. We were the ones who risked everything to bring it into fruition. Consequently, it will be we who stand up in its defense. With that said, it's time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. No, folks, she will not ask for 6 weeks mandatory maternity leave. She's just going to pour your drink. As always, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my First Officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We also invite you to leave your comments either here on YouTube or on our Google Plus page or Facebook. On top of that, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. There you'll find our personal Twitter accounts, the Blogspot account where we're placing audio-only versions of our state-of-the-art radio program, and the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, go ahead and tell them a bit about the Cafe Press account.
Well, again, as mentioned before, there's a lot of goodies and novelties where people could show their support for the show, but also show their support for their own individualism with first-class passenger logos and our traditional logo on there. Folks, with the first-class passenger logo, people will truly understand that you are an individual. And, folks, I promise you this, there will be no added taxes, no Supreme Court mandated hidden fees that will inflate the prices. It's just not going to happen. You're not mandated to pay for it. You're not mandated to pay more than what you should. So, folks, please check it out. Give us a little bit of support, but more so support yourselves with this and show everybody that you are a true ultimate wielder of popular sovereignty.
Thank you again, folks. We will see you again next time. Do take care.